Hi y'all. Tonight I'm going to make sugar cookies for Christmas, and the ingredients I need are 1 cup of margarine, softened, 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, and I use the extra fine, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and a pinch of salt. That's for the sugar cookie dough. And then for icing the sugar cookies after they've cooled, I'm going to use about 4 cups of confectioner's sugar, a little bit of milk, and then food coloring to color the frosting whatever color I want, and then assorted sprinkles and decor for the sugar cookies. So anyway, I'm going to measure out the ingredients and I'll be right back. Okay, y'all. So I've measured out all my ingredients, and the first thing I'm going to do is take my 3.5 cups of flour, and I'm going to add in the 1 teaspoon of baking soda, the half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and just the pinch of salt. And then I'm going to stir that just a little bit with a whisk, just to kind of combine it with and have all the dry ingredients combined so that they're ready to go. So I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to take my butter, which is 1 cup of butter, and I'm going to add the 1.5 cups of sugar and the 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And we're going to cream that well before we add the eggs. So let me get the mixer over here. Yeah, so I'm going to cream those 3 ingredients together real well before we add the vanilla. Before we add the eggs. Okay, I've scraped that down once and then continued to beat it, and now I'm going to scrape it down again, but I'm going to add the eggs this time. So I'm going to add my 2 eggs. I'm going to start on low to beat them in. And I just want to mix until the eggs are fully combined. I don't want to beat them too much at this point. I'm going to scrape it down one more time. Okay, now I'm going to put it on low, and then I'm going to start adding the dry mixture to the ingredients. Oops. I'm going to turn it up about 1, just until it's good and combined and there's no dry bits in the bottom. It's all come together. Okay, mine looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take it off the paddle and I'm going to dust my counter to get it ready to roll out. Okay, so I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees. I've lined my cookie sheets with some parchment paper. You don't have to do that. I just do it to make it easier for me. And I'm going to flour my surface very well. You need more flour than you think you need. Then I'm going to take my dough and I want to get both sides coated with flour before I start rolling it out. If you don't have enough flour as you roll it out, it's going to hit some bare spots and it'll stick to your surface. So just make sure you got enough flour underneath it. Okay, and flour your rolling pin. I haven't refrigerated my dough because my kitchen's been pretty cool. It's been cool here lately. And I just find it easier to work with when I haven't chilled it ahead of time. You're going to want to roll this out to between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch thick. And just try to keep it uniform. Okay, I'm going to start with this and see if this is good enough. Be sure and have an extra little bowl of flour to dip your cookie cutters in. So I've got about that much, or you can just set the flour off to the side of where you're cutting. And today, I'm going to use cookie cutters that my mother always used when we were growing up. I've got a bell, a Christmas tree. I like to do moons and stars and sometimes hearts. We also used to have an angel and a Santa mold. These are my favorite to use because I like mostly blues and greens. So anyway, I'm going to dip these and start pressing out the cookies. I'm going to start with the Christmas trees. And if they come off in the cookie cutter, I just take them and pop them out into my hand. And don't worry about the extra flour on them. I'll show you how to get that off. I'm going to put them on my cookie sheet. And we'll brush the extra flour off later with a pastry brush. See if I can get somewhere where you can see what I'm doing. See, I'll do a bell. I'm going to do a whole pan of the trees, and then once I get these all cut out, I'll come back and show you the cookie sheets. Okay, y'all, I'm fixing to show you my pans of cookies, but before I do, these are the scraps from my first cutting, and I'm going to gather them up and I'm going to combine the dough together and I'm going to re-roll it. Only re-roll it one time. I made the mistake in high school of re-rolling it over and over and over again to make sure I got every last bit of dough, and you couldn't even bite the cookies. They were so hard. So I learned my lesson early. So only re-roll it once, and so make sure you put your cookie cutters as close together as you can so that you get the most out of your dough. And let me show you how I get the sheets of cookies ready before I bake them in the oven. Okay, you don't have to have a pastry brush. You can actually just brush them off with your hands, but it just makes it easier and you don't take a chance on denting the cookie if you use a pastry brush. But like for the bells, like here's a good example. Here's one with a lot of flour on it. I just lightly brush it off, and if it moves the cookie at all, I can just put it right back. But I just dust off all the little pieces, the bits of flour you can see from the top. The bottom, it doesn't matter because they're going to bake with the cookie. So that one's good to go in the oven. And then my Christmas trees. I do this only one cookie sheet at a time because I don't want to take a chance on my oven having uneven spots, and I want the air to be able to circulate around the cookie sheets real good. But we're going to bake these in a 350 oven for, let's see, 8 to 10 minutes. And of course I'm going to start checking them at 8. So I'll be back when this first batch comes out of the oven. Okay, y'all. So last night I finished baking my cookies and I let them cool completely on cooling racks. And I made Christmas trees, bells, stars, and moons. And I'm going to do the Christmas trees green, and I like to do the bells, the stars, and the moon blue. So I'm going to mix up the icing that I use, which is just very, very simple. And it's just powdered sugar and a little bit of milk. So I've got about 4 cups of powdered sugar here. Let me get the milk. And I don't really use measurements for this, so I'm just going to start with a little bit of milk, not much, and start whisking. Yeah. This is going to be not a thick frosting. It's going to be almost a runny frosting, but not so runny that it's like water thin. I just kind of, I'll know the consistency when I get to it. And of course you can't mess up, because if it gets too runny, you just add more powdered sugar to it. If it's too dry, you just add more milk. When you get close to where you want it, just add little tiny amounts of milk until it's the way you like it. And you want to make sure and get, I use a whisk because I want to get all the little lumps of sugar out. You don't want any lumps in your frosting, because it settles and then you'll see the little pieces of sugar lumps in your cookie if you don't get them all. Okay, that's about the consistency I like right there. Now I'm going to divide it into 2 little bowls and then add the food coloring. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've divided it pretty evenly into 2 bowls. So I'm going to start with the green. I'm going to start with a few drops. Oh, it's 4 drops. And we'll see how far that goes. Because I don't want the colors to be real dark. I like them more of a pastel color. I'm going to do maybe 1 more drop of the green. I think that's enough. And I just want to mix the food coloring in to where you don't see streaks. It's all one uniform color. So I'm going to use this color for my Christmas trees. I'll set that aside. Then I'm going to do the blue. Three, four, five. I'm going to go ahead and do 5 and we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be good. But depending on how much icing you make, you know, just add your drops till it's the color you want. Make it any color you like. Okay, now I'm going to lay out either wax paper, parchment paper, or freezer paper and lay my cookies out, and then we'll start decorating. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to do my Christmas trees first. So I've got my sprinkles all ready to go. I've got the caps off so that I can sprinkle them. I'm going to sprinkle them as I frost each one. So I'm going to start with this first one. And I put down freezer paper just because I have a ton of it. And I'm just going to kind of, as I pour the icing on here, just kind of start getting it where I want it to go. And you can either use the back of your spoon, or I also like to use an offset spatula. I don't really want it dripping off the sides. So I start with little. You can always add more. And then once I've got the frosting on there, I'm going to go ahead and add my sprinkles so they'll stick to it while it's wet. And then I'll set that aside. And I'll keep doing it with assorted sprinkles. I've got the crystal sugar, the green colored. I've got another set of little non-perils. It's different colors with blue and green. And then I have little bigger balls that I'm going to try. I've never used these before, so I'm going to see how they turn out. Anyway, I'm going to keep frosting and I'll be back when they're done and I'll show you what they look like. Okay guys, I've finished decorating all of them, and now it's just a matter of letting them sit for a long time till they dry. If you don't have animals or kids in your house, I would leave them out for at least 24 hours and taste test one to see if the icing has set and is completely dry yet. I wouldn't store them until the icing is completely dry, but otherwise guard them with your life so that the cats, the dogs, or the kids don't get into them. But depending on how thick you spread your icing on, that depends on how long it'll take to dry. So the thinner, the less time, but still several hours. And then the thicker, it'll probably take at least a day or so. My mother used to bake these. She'd let them sit out and cool real good on racks overnight before she frosted them. Then she'd frost them early in the day. Then they'd sit out until the next day to dry at least. And then she would put them in boxes and layer single layers with wax paper between them and store them in a cool cabinet or a cool, but seal them real, I mean, not seal them, but I mean in a nice box or Ziploc, you know, big Tupperware container with layers of wax paper in between them, and then put them out on the platter when you're ready to serve them. And these last for several weeks. They're really good. And it's almost like they get better the longer they've been sitting. So, you know, like 3 to 4 days is probably when they taste the best. Anyway, I'll leave the recipe down below. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.